Three, two, one.
You are a worthless, friendless, faggot-lipped little piece of shit whose mommy left daddy because it wasn't Eugene O'Neill, and he's now weeping and slobbering over my drum set like a fucking 9-year-old girl. So for the final motherfucking time, say it louder! I'm upset. Hi, welcome to Campycast. This is... Ooh, man, that
That's
damaged
the
my vocal cords a
that's
little
the
bit. But
perfect
yeah,
intro for something like this.
yeah,
So that's
yeah, yeah.
that's cool. Hello, welcome to
A
the
couple Fletcher
last.
quotes lined up, but I quite like that one.
Yeah,
So, ah,
that's
but
the last. This is the last Campy Cast episode of 2023. It's been a great year. A lot of cool memories. It's our first like
yeah.
full year of the podcast, I guess. So that's cool to think
Yeah, we
about.
dropped a lot of our best episodes this year, I would say.
Yeah.
It has been
So
like a lot of fun. We've improved a lot at this podcast game. But
yeah.
enough about that. See, it's not just us. Joining us for our final episode of the year is Miguel.
Yeah,
Hello
yeah,
there.
Miguel, introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello, my name is Miguel. I'm just someone who really likes movies and talking about them, and I'm really excited to be here with two of my favorite people discussing my two favorite movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's nice.
that's
These are both
nice.
movies we probably wanted to do for like a while, but
Yeah,
you
they're
know, they
two
were never
movies
like
I am incredibly passionate
yeah,
about. But yeah,
yeah.
and and overall, looking back at this year, it's been a very productive year, and I'm just looking forward to new things continuing to happen in Campy Cast as we think of more things,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's been a fun year,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think we chose some two good movies to end the year on. Two of some of my favorite, genuinely some of my favorite pieces of media ever, and I'm looking forward to discussing them. And it was fun to revisit them as well. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we haven't done an episode like this in a while where it's like, two really good movies. It's either like, solid ones or do like a contrast thing where it's like a really good movie and then a bad one or like a big franchise where it's like an intermix. But see,
hmm
here, like we got two two very, very good movies on our hands here, like classics, I would say. And no new release that's probably shit to talk about. Because we
yeah.
talked about
I mean,
Aquaman
yeah,
2
we talked
yesterday.
about them into
But
in the recent quickie. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
sorry for picking these two movies. They'll probably look kind of bad in comparison to that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Shame
I mean,
on
they're
them.
going to be a lot less homophobic, I guess. But
Yeah.
moving,
Anyways,
moving forward.
yeah, I guess we'll just get right into it. There's not really much notable news to really delve into today, but there's like some small news, like more stuff on the Jonathan Major stuff, but I don't really have anything that passionate or interesting to say about it that isn't blatantly obvious that
The only thing I
affects
have on
people.
that is I think it's incredibly funny that people are like, "Well, Ant-Man 3 sucked, but I'll give it a slightly higher rating because of Jonathan Majors." And now he's like, "Fuck, look at him. What? Oh, he abused women because you can't use that as a positive anymore."
Yep.
Zoinks.
Yeah, went
But
from the year of majors to the year of majors being put in jail. What a
yeah,
year.
yeah.
What a year. Just when he was having just the best career and then he just went downhill so it's really
Yeah,
funny
yeah,
to think
he was
about
in a
it.
big Marvel movie. He was in the new
Creed
Big
3.
Rocky, two big
Yeah.
franchises, and it's like, well, down the drain.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
Anyways, I guess we'll get into the first movie. How about we start with 12 Angry Men? You guys starting with this one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine. They're
Yeah.
both great. This is taking this is dethroned Vertigo as the oldest movie we've talked about on the
No,
podcast. We
what
should
do you
really
know?
talk about
Oh,
like
nice.
older stuff.
Yeah, we don't
But
talk about
yeah,
that much of like yeah, like really old stuff, but like old stuff
BoJack.
is
Talking
good.
about old.
Old stuff
Oh
is
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Not
crazy.
every old
I know.
piece of cinema is bad. I don't know. I don't know
Oh,
Who
if
would
there's
have
people
known?
actually saying that, but
yeah, crazy.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway,
So
since you picked both of these, I'll let you introduce the film briefly, Miguel, and then we'll get into discussing and whatnot. So,
All right. So, 12 Angry Men was released in 1957. It's basically about. Oh, yeah. And before I say anything else, I do want to say that I do want to delve into spoiler territory for both of these movies, obviously.
oh yeah,
yeah,
So,
that's like
like
that's yeah, we
I think
usually
I
do
given
that.
spoilers, but
But with all
yeah,
of these
yeah.
movies, but yeah,
yeah.
definitely if if some people still go to these episodes, I guess, and like expect to watch these furrow discussions without spoilers. So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
just gonna
Anyways,
say that.
so yeah, it's about a group of 12 jurors who are supposed to vote on whether a an 18-year-old boy is who is accused of murdering his father is guilty or not guilty. And at
Hmm.
first, 11 of the jurors vote that he is guilty, but one juror votes that he is not guilty, and it is up to him to change everyone's mind and vote the boy not guilty, because if they do, then they'll send him to the electric chair. So it's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's a really
yeah,
good premise for a movie, in my opinion. I thought it was like a cool concept of having. I always enjoy these type of detective mystery stories, and I think there's a lot of potential to them. And I think that this
yeah,
film just has a lot of intrigue, and it's everything about it just
Yeah,
like works for me. You know, like just
yeah,
building
yeah.
up like every single juror. They don't have names. I mean, they do have names. Like two of them get their names revealed near
Two
the
of them are
end,
named at
but
the end, but the rest on Letterboxd are
yeah,
just labeled. This is a juror one, two, for like 12. So I
yeah,
just,
but like we get
you
to
yeah.
know,
know
They're
quite a
never
bit about
actually
some of
named.
them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
which is
I think
kind
it's
of
like a
cool.
testament to these characters. Like they don't even have fucking names, and you get like you can point to any one of them, like you know exactly what their personality's like and why they think he's guilty or not guilty, and what beliefs like they
Yeah,
hold
some
through.
are
Just this like
biased, some
simple,
are
yeah.
like some are taking
Some
this
just want
case
like the
really
truth.
personal, which is
And,
just interesting to me
yeah,
how they delve into that.
Yeah,
So,
they don't
especially
even
Jared.
have names, but they're better
Yeah,
fleshed out than like 99% of characters in like any movie.
you know, yeah,
yeah, that's true.
that's true.
It's
They have
I think what like my favorite thing about this. There's a lot of things I love about this movie, but my favorite thing about it is like the turn of it is so natural. Because see, you don't really know anything about the boy. You know what he did, and you see him for like 1 second near the beginning of the movie. You're like, okay, that's the image of the guy who supposedly stabbed his father. Then you get to the actual juror room where everyone's like discussing it. But and at first you're like, okay, well, we he there's no way he couldn't have done it because you see like there's a bunch this key evidence that's outlined. It's like okay, there was an eyewitness across the window. They had like a knife that could have stabbed them with it, and his alibi doesn't add up because he said he was at the movies, but he doesn't remember what the movies are. Those are the three pieces of evidence we have against him, and you might think, okay, that's an open and shut case. How the fuck can it not be him, right? But then slowly the movie like turns, and every piece of evidence you're like, oh, okay, maybe not actually. And it's
Hmm.
so naturally done because none of the excuses are bullshit. It all makes sense,
Yeah,
but
it
just this
all like
Yeah,
slow,
really, it's all
natural
intriguing
turn that's
seeing them
really,
fully break down this case and like slowly you
yeah,
get the eighth juror who is the only one that's undecided. You see him like slowly convince other people that that like this case may not just be open and shut, you know, and there's a deeper like it's just more deeper. There's like so many interesting little details that you think might not matter, but like once you break it down, it all becomes so clear, and that you can tell that hey, maybe you know what, this boy isn't really guilty if you really think about it, and it's like wow, and every
yeah,
excuse is
yeah,
believable, and it's just such a really impressively written and delivered movie all through like each of these jurors like discovering this truth after the majority of them wasn't even sure that was sure that the boy was guilty, and you the audience might also think he's guilty on a first viewing because you know yeah, so you're essentially on the road with the other jurors as well, which I think is a very interesting way to
yeah,
tell a
yeah.
story.
It's like very like slow build up for the dialogue and everything, but yeah, none of it's forced. It's just a very natural turnaround through like because at first the juror A, yeah, I think yeah, it's the eighth guy. He's one who's like, okay, like can we just talk about this for? Because everyone's like, you know what, we gotta kill this guy because a lot of them, some don't actually care about the case. There's this one, I forget which juror it is, but one of them just wants to go to the fucking ball game or
I think it
whatever.
was
It's
like
not
Juror
the
seven,
seventh one, yeah.
okay, yeah.
Juror
See, I know
seven.
you remember that off the top, but you know they all like some of them aren't even that interested in the case. They just want to get out of here. But juror eight, he doesn't even go in saying he's not guilty. He just wants to talk about it at first. Be like, okay, so why is he guilty? And then from there is when evidence starts lining up to be like, okay, he could. he could not, and then that like turn happens, and it's really quite fascinating to me because this movie, there's a little bit at the beginning where they're walking into the room. There's a little bit at the end when they're all leaving, and then the movie ends. But most of it is in the confines of this one room, and yet despite that, there's like it's one of the most engaging movies I've ever seen with all the dialogue and pieces and how everyone has their own perspective. It's all just, I think it's a really good testament to how like well you can write something because it's so simple yet so complex at the same time for everyone's like
Yeah.
combined motives and everything.
If
Something
you
I
if you
really
look at it if you look at it like completely surface level, then I would have to say that it might be like the simplest movie I've ever seen, just solely based on the fact that it's mostly one room and it's like mostly dialogue based.
Yeah,
But if
it
you like
seems
really look at it like deeply, if you look at it like on a thematic level, it has so many layers to it and there's just so many different ways to look at it, and it's just like it goes from like a simple movie, like Ryan said, to like very complex at the same time.
yeah,
I
exactly.
know. I don't know why I was like so invested in a bunch of 12 angry men, just arguing in a courtroom for 97 minutes, and yet it's probably one of my favorite movies of all time. And like,
Yeah,
Exactly.
just
if I
every
had to say, like, I would probably call this like the true greatest movie ever made. Like, I don't know if I would call it my favorite because we're gonna be talking about another movie later that's another contender for that spot.
it's one of
But I
like
think
the
this is
objective
like the
picks for
true,
me in
like,
terms of
best
best.
written film ever made.
Mm.
It's you can barely pick apart anything. It really. So
Yeah,
I
I
can
don't
give
have
you
like I
that.
don't think I can think of any problems with it. So like, yeah,
Yeah,
and going more in depth on the overall like story delivers, each of the jurors kind of have their like own perspective on things. I ended up noting them because as more I rewatch this movie, the more stuff I somewhat have noticed here. Like how one of the jurors, I think it was like the fifth one, is shown to come from like a similar slum home as the
yeah,
kid, so he somewhat like connects to him in some way. There is a scene in this movie where the third juror is kind of like thinking that it guy's being a bit biased, but then it's revealed in the end that he's the one who was being technically he was the one being biased because he was putting like
yeah,
basically they give juror 3 this interesting backstory with like his son and how he and him had a falling out a while ago, and he ended up leaving 2 years ago, and he has let that like loss somewhat like consume him in terms of how he sees things, and that's what makes him like one of the most interesting characters because he continues to deny the fact that he's guilty, and the part where he just starts breaking down and crying by the end of the movie and just pleads not guilty is genuinely one of the best parts of this movie. The ending in this movie
Oh
is
yeah, hundred
phenomenal
percent.
to me, and I love
I think
the
the
yeah,
ending.
I love
If I
the
had to pick
ending.
like a favorite scene, the ending would probably be like every scene in this movie is amazing, but you get what I mean. I think what makes the ending so like powerful, right, is because see, this movie doesn't really have a villain because it's like guys talking. There's not really a protagonist or antagonist. If you
Yeah.
wanted to be lame, you could be like, oh well, Juror Eight's the protagonist and Juror Three's the villain. I guess if you want to simplify, you could say that. But no one's really right or wrong. It's just a story of people talking. But I guess you could say Juror Three, he's the one who's the most stubborn because he's like, how could he not be? There's all this. So, and he's like, he like holds that and he's so stubborn. So really, the movie's building up to eventually he's gonna have to change his perspective. They can't leave the room without a verdict either way. So when he finally like snaps and is like not guilty after all this pressure gets to him and all of his arguments are failing, it's just a really powerful scene, especially as I got the actor name Lee J. Cobb. He plays Juror
yeah,
3 in August. One of the best performances in like a movie, honestly.
In
The way
general,
he
the
like
yeah. It's
performances
pretty
in this
perfect.
movie is just amazing.
he
Performances are
Yeah, this
phenomenal.
movie is just incredibly convincing in the way that it's acted, like each and every one. One of my favorite bits of acting is when the very last piece of evidence to be um, refuted, I guess, is when juror number nine discovers juror number four the glasses on his mark, the 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 mark left because of his
yeah
glasses.
Oh yeah, I
Like
love that moment.
you you just as soon as he says that he had a mark because of his glasses, like you can see the moment that he is convinced. He didn't even have to say like why he said that. He already knew. Like it's just brilliant acting, just the way that he you can see the moment he just changes his mind
Yeah,
right there.
Yeah. That that part's such like a perfect bit too, because it's like, okay, well, all this other stuff you can pleasantly disprove. The like, even though it seems so obvious, like, well, the movie, you could be like, yeah, this was a couple days ago, and he was under a lot of pressure. You can see, and he can see, I can forget that. But the glasses thing, it's like, it's just so fucking cool reveal where it's basically like, okay, sure, all this other stuff, but like, someone literally saw him. If that doesn't prove it, then nothing like can.
exactly.
So
Like
it's
I
like,
think
okay,
that's the
how's it gonna
most
be?
like convincing piece of evidence out of all of
Yeah,
them.
exactly. But then when it's like, oh shit, he might have not even seen because then they reveal the thing about the glasses, and that seems like, oh, inconspicuous. They're grasping at straws, but it's like, no, really think it was the middle of the night, and she might not be had glasses on, and she was looking from a far away distance. You already can't see that well without glasses, like close viewed, but like think
Yeah,
across the fucking hall or whatever. So when you put that into effect, it's like, damn. I guess not even like the witness could have missed seen, and that part's so fucking cool to me because like something that seems so obviously one way, this movie perfectly picks about. No, not really this. It's actually this, and I don't know. I don't know. This seems like it's simple, but really the way everything is breaking down, and you as an audience are so sweet. Because I don't. I This is my first time rewatching the movie. I had seen it before. It's like I knew right that it was gonna be the opposite way, but even still, I was like, damn. The movie so
Yeah.
flawlessly leads you one way, and then flips it the other. It's such a fucking cool
So
movie, man.
something that's really cool about this movie is that every single piece of evidence has a reason for the jurors to believe that it wouldn't be that way. Like when juror number five realizes that he couldn't have made the mark the stab he did with the experience he had with the knife, and how like juror number nine realizes that the woman had probably wore glasses because of the glasses that juror number four had. Like it's all natural ways that they realize that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
evidence is probably faulty.
hmm
Yeah, for being just a simple conversation, it has a really good flow to it because they're all just like, not like a specific, they don't just go, all right, this evidence, we'll talk about this evidence. It like things, each piece naturally leads into the next, except, and then even when there's like, I think it's like around halfway through when they take like a break from the case just to like stop and like refresh you. Even
Yeah.
those scenes, they like play a part in it. Cause you see everyone's like perspectives from the case while they're like away from talking about it, and they're just like doing their own like shit. It's all like for a movie that's such a casual conversation, each dialogue piece is purposeful and like further adds to what they're doing. And I think that's
In
really
general, it's
cool.
a really well paced movie.
Oh, definitely.
Oh
It
Yeah.
really
yeah.
flows well.
Yeah.
All that for
Speaking
being
of
so
which, I want
like
to bring up some of
short.
the technical aspects that I really like. So this film is black and white because 1957, and it's honestly something I always love with some of these old movies, and I think especially in a film like this, it kind of just adds to the like feeling of isolation. It really just immerses you in this courtroom with like these men. I don't know, I just really like that, and same with the music though. Like I love the music that is used when the 12 jurors are like walking out of the courtroom while the third juror
Yeah.
just starts crying.
It's very triumphant,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Like
all
There's
it's
only
all
really like one piece of music, but it's used in the most effective ways so that the audience kind of to
yeah.
emphasize
And
important
I feel like
moments.
the movie not having a lot of music also adds to the feeling of isolation in that way
Yeah,
in
I love
terms
that.
of the environment that we're stuck in for the majority of this movie, and it just makes the experience a lot more powerful, which works really well. It just
Yeah.
goes to show what technical aspects could do with
And to add on
movies.
to that, this is one of those movies like I couldn't really imagine like watching it in color. The black and white just
Oh
like
yeah, not at all.
and
Yeah.
embodies it so well. And I also
yeah,
wanted to mention that there's like a remake of this movie from
Oh
like the
yeah, I was
90s, I
gonna
think.
mention
there
that. I
is. I
never have
saw that.
seen
Yeah.
it,
And like, yeah, I haven't seen it. I feel like I maybe should sometime just to get a new perspective
I
on the
hope
film.
it's
But
not terrible.
I I doubt that
I
it's
don't.
like an actually bad film, but
Yeah,
12 Angry
I
Men is
don't
just
think
such
it
a
could be that
perfect
bad.
movie that it just should never be touched. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like honestly, I don't know. I highly doubt the 1997 like reimagining of it is that bad. Like I don't know.
No,
yeah, I doubt
I
it's a
hear
bad
weirdly
movie.
positive things about it. I just don't know
Oh,
many people
Like it
have
is a
seen it or
perfect
like.
script. Like the only way you could mess it up is if you like drastically change the story or if the acting was bad. But still, like making a remake just
yeah,
completely
because
misses
like
the
it's just
point of the
gonna
movie.
feel like, oh, okay, sure, you got some of the same good aspects, but what is this movie offering me that that the original film did
Yeah,
not? You
exactly.
know? So like that's like the
Yeah,
main
exactly.
reason why I haven't watched it and have like I might watch it at some point just out of curiosity since I've become so attached to this movie. But like, yeah, I
Me
definitely
too.
agree with that. It's like,
Apparently, just directed by William Friedkin, the guy behind The Exorcist. So I guess
oh,
that's
that's
something.
interesting.
That's
I did
just
not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know
yeah,
that either.
odd. But yeah, I why you mentioned like the whole like color aspect because it's weird because this was 1957, so this would have been like when color was starting to like black and white was about starting around this point to get phased out because
Yeah,
mostly like 20 obviously movies started black and white because there was no capability for color. They eventually did late 30s, but color was like fucking expensive, so not as many movies were adopting it. But like by late 50s, early 60s, that's when it started to get like
start to
mostly
fade
phased
away.
out. I think it's like very purposeful that this movie, despite being done by like a relatively bigger studio, MGM, I'm pretty sure they were still like, you know what? No, we're gonna still gonna make it black and white, which I think has this very distinct look to it, and I think like helps the like movie. All like the movie's shot beautifully. One thing, which is like a big thing about it. Like
Yeah.
simple conversations are enhanced just by how they're like shot and framed and how everything's like done. But yeah, that
Yeah.
black and white look really does help it a lot, which is weird. I think they did there's a colorized version of the film out there, which like adds color
Oh
in
yeah,
post,
that's
but I'm
true.
not. Yeah, I would not watch. I don't know.
Yeah,
They
that
do
would
that
have
for a
just
lot
been
of
weird.
30s, 40s movies, but I wouldn't want to watch
I
that.
believe
It
it's
looks
a Wonderful Life has one as well.
it does too, and I've like seen bits of that. It looks
Yeah.
fucking weird. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
not a fan, but.
And also like the cinematography editing is genuinely masterful. Like the way that it intentionally gets closer. Like at the end of the movie, once like juror number three is going on his big rant, it's pretty much only like close-ups of each character's face. And that's intentional to make you feel like how do you say claustrophobic and make you feel like you're part of that basically. And
Yeah,
like
yeah,
throughout the whole
exactly.
movie, like each shot is intentional, whether it's a close up or like a wide shot. Like to see each character's reaction to a specific moment, and also the way the film is edited, like it never feels like it's one of those movies where dialogue feels like the most uh important, well it is the most important part, but like where dialogue just takes you in so much that you forget that there's like no action in this movie. It just is characters talking, but it's so engaging because of the way the film is edited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of the back to like the actual jurors in general, I don't think sure not all of them are like the most fleshed out, but at the same time, I don't think all of them need to be, you know? Because like
Well, no, because there's little one. There's 12 people. Having like
exactly,
12 people
yeah,
spread
would be
across
too
like 90
much.
something minutes. That's not like not everyone inherently needs to be the most developed. But regardless, they all still have like they do like I think when they do
Their
scenes throughout the movie where
presence
they
is
just go
all
around the table
essential to the
and
story as
like
well. So like,
yeah, and when you
yeah,
go around like they do scenes where they just go around the table asking everyone. I think there's one at the beginning, and like I think those really hone in everyone's like personality as well. Because while not everyone is the most distinct, each of them have like perspectives on like the issue that like how helps get it across. Like Juror 2 is a little more like timid than everyone else. Juror 3 is more stubborn. Juror 8's the like our main guy we're following. He's the one who's just like the most determined to see how everything like works. Juror get everyone has their own like perspectives. I think they're all very solidly written characters for like how like simple the story is. It's all great stuff, great ass
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
And I do want to mention that, like, even though a movie like this could make it seem like everyone who votes guilty is bad, juror number four, one of my favorite characters of the whole movie, he has like completely valid reasons to think that he's still guilty.
yeah,
Um,
and it makes it really satisfying when his opinion ends up changing.
Yeah, because Juror 4's whole thing is he's not dismissing any of the evidence, but he's like, I think out of the people there, he's presented as one of the most
Yeah, one
analytical
of the
ones.
yeah,
So he's just trying to
that's a good way
approach
to
it like,
describe him.
yeah. 'Cause I think they really do like showcase how life and death this situation really is. Because, well, it literally is life and death. The kid lives or dies depending on the situation. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, the whole thing is they can treat this situation so casually. That's why, when, like, one of them's like, I gotta go to the ball game, it's like,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
aren't treating the situation as like as tactfully. So no matter what position there is, they can't fucking sugarcoat it. They can't go like, we'll just let him off the hook. Because if they let it, I'd say in both situations, if they let him, they kill him, they could potentially kill an accused man. But if they let him off free without the substantial evidence that he isn't guilty, they're letting a murderer get away scot free. So either way, it's literally, they gotta make sure. Plead certain that their perspective is accurate because either way they're either fucking over an innocent man or letting a guilty man just fucking run free. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like the situation's treated so tactfully because it is that tactfully. It's literally life and death, despite just being a simple conversation. I think that's really cool
Yeah.
about the movie as
yeah.
well.
One of the most interesting of the jurors is the 10th one, who is also shown to
Oh
be
yeah.
biased against the main kid in terms of the prejudice he shows to his kind of like people in some way. And I feel like
Yeah.
just seeing his like attitude and overall performance makes him one of the most interesting characters in the movie. And I love the fact that like after like probably our last main scene with him when he starts continuing like insisting upon his prejudiced beliefs in terms of like stereotyping and whatnot, he ends up like just kind of breaking down into a single desk more in the corner. And then the next time we see him vote not guilty, which makes him come to some sort of like a realization that is shown entirely through visuals, which is something I really love in terms of what they do with him. And
Yeah.
that's what makes him one of the
Yeah.
best characters in the movie because like he's just interesting in terms of how they flesh him out in some way, and they don't even like do much with fleshing it out. It's just like very subtle, you know. I love it.
Something that's really interesting about Juror 10 is how he always refers to people of color, like the people he's prejudiced against, as them. Like they're so awful, they're the worst. He never refers to them as like actual people, which like shows how
Yeah,
like he really does not think of them as human
he
beings. He
thinks
thinks of
they're
them
all
as another species.
liars, cheats, you
Yeah.
know. It's yeah, and it's honestly just kind of sad seeing all these people isolated in this one room. And I also really like going back to Juror 3 since he's also one of the best of the jurors in the movie. I just love like it's genuinely just like emotional by the end of it when like he just starts breaking down sadly, voting not guilty, realizing just how like biased he's been, and it's clear that him losing his son has like made him seem like he's failed as a parent and has made him like lash out at others, which is why there's so many why he's like the most arrogant out of all the jurors in the room in terms of like just refusing to believe the truth or the possibility that he could be not guilty because he essentially somewhat sees this kid as like a version of his son and just like he's just lashing out at the world in some way and you can't and it's, you kind of feel
Yeah.
bad for him. It's kind of sad. And the ending where he just kind of sits down while all the other jurors leave the room, only for the eighth juror, the man that he's been like facing with the biggest challenge he has faced throughout the entire movie, just to grab his coat and then like just and they just both walk out the room. It's a great moment. It's like what a phenomenal ending
Yeah.
to a phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And
I love it.
and like most other movies that would be kind of like a cop out scene, like, oh, there has to be a reason why the last guy like chooses to like vote uh not guilty, but like they already established that he has a broken relationship with his son, which makes like the scene where like his picture falls out with his wallet like all
Oh,
the
I
more
love that. When
like
he
you
throws that
realize.
as
Oh
evidence,
yeah.
like damn.
And then yeah, and then he says stuff throughout the whole movie like one of the first things he says is that like you should beat those kids down before they start getting into trouble. Like even before they reveal anything about like his relationship with his son, like you get subtle hints as to what he already thinks about his case and his relationship with his son.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In terms of the other jurors, since I guess we're kind of just discussing like in depth to some of them, even though some of them like don't aren't the most fleshed out, but they're still like obviously essential to the story in terms of their opinion, you know. Like obviously, I
Yeah.
feel like in if this situation would happen in real life, it would go exactly like this. So I don't think like every single man is gonna show like everything about their lives and stuff, but we get a semblance of who these people are in some way, you know, like some
But
simple
that's the thing. You don't even need to like see all their backstories just to get how they are as people, which is it's very true to life. You have certain conversations with people, you like get how they usually like interact and do things and talk depending on the kind of situation. And with each of like those 12 people, we get it through like through all their dialogue choices and how it all like goes down as we like discussed. It's neat. Very, very
Yeah,
cool.
there's a lot of interesting stuff. Like there's foreshadowing, there are just subtle hints within the characters that reveal the way they are, reveal their backstory and how it plays into what they think about the case. And we were talking about Juror 10 earlier,
yeah.
and we did mention the scene where he kind of just breaks down. And I do want to say that that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie because I love the way that everyone, even the other jurors who are painted as like negative people, they all like stand up and just face the opposite direction of him. Like it's just such a powerful moment because it shows that like he really is standing alone. Like yeah, it's just so powerful. Like
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just remarkable watching this one, uh, one man's logically and believably convince an entire, jury that this boy is not guilty, and it's like, yeah, and you believe every second of it as like yeah, and you get a good sense of who Juror 8 is in some way, even though we don't know like all of their
yeah,
backstories, obviously. But like, yeah, one thing I noticed on this is that I noticed that like right away they show a sudden glimpse that Juror 8 is a bit different from the other ones when like we see him like looking out a window, kind of just like being distracted and focused, and then he ends up and then someone calls him and he ends up sitting down while everyone else is sitting down. It's like, I don't know, I always like that detail in some way.
yeah.
It shows like
Yeah,
a
that
Ju-
is
good
cool.
setup for what's about to
There's a way to
happen.
like make him stand out from the other ones to be like, okay, this is gonna be our like our guy who's like
This
really
guy right
opposed
here.
to everyone else, which is what
Yeah,
happens.
Juror 8 has to be one of the most brave and mature characters in pretty much any movie because the reason why he doesn't raise his hand and votes him guilty is solely because he just wants to discuss the case more. Like, obviously, it's hard to just send a boy off to the electric chair without having a discussion about it. So he doesn't raise his hand because it would just feel wrong, and that's a very respectful thing.
Yeah,
And
he's just a
like,
respectable,
and
nice person, especially compared
Yeah,
to some of the others
and
we've seen
the
before. Like
and that
some
really
people,
shows how like bad some of the other jurors are. Like how juror 7 who just wants to like get to his like
yeah, I
baseball
was
game, like
literally
he
just about to mention that. Yeah,
yeah. No,
yeah.
there's this one scene I really like where I think so. Juror 7, he switches his vote from not
Oh
guilty
yeah,
from guilty to not guilty, and then the
yeah,
other guys are like, I think it's Juror 4 or one of the other guys. They're like berating him. It's like,
juror
why'd you change
11.
your vote? It's
yeah.
like, yeah,
Juror
okay, hold on.
11.
Yeah, they berate him to be like, well, why'd you change your vote then? Because it's like he didn't actually think about it. He just changed it to get away. It's not even that they're mad that he
To
changed his
get
vote.
farther
They're
into
mad
the
he doesn't have
case.
reasons for it, and that's what I think is so interesting. It's like it's not even about who's right and who's wrong. It's about having reasons for why they'd be like wrong or right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a
That's
very fascinating thing.
that's
How
also why I think it's so interesting that he's like the juror who sits like directly in the middle. because he's the most indifferent. Like he doesn't care about where
Oh,
the case goes.
man, fuck! I didn't even think about that. That's cool as hell. Wow,
Yeah.
Yeah,
detail.
and yeah, it's a
Uh,
really interesting thing how like he just doesn't care at all. Like I don't know if I actually have a least favorite juror in terms of like their personality, but like he's definitely in the running because there's something especially insulting about someone who doesn't care about the way a boy's life goes just because he cares more about something else in his life.
In terms of like, in
yeah,
terms of that question of like the juror, like the least. I mean, I like all of them. You know, just because I don't love this juror as much as the other ones doesn't mean he's bad. Like, there's nothing wrong with this character.
They're
They're
all
all
exceptionally written.
exactly, yeah, they're all exceptionally
exactly.
written characters that you feel for each of them. And I don't know. I just don't get into the. I just don't remember much about the sixth juror. So like, I just
Oh
kind of
yeah, the
like,
sixth juror.
yeah, he's like,
I
he's like the guy in the
There's been
photo
like
with the butt.
Juror 2 a lot. I don't know what it is. I just like him.
Yeah.
He's like
Oh
the.
yeah, I
I
think
like how he's more
it's
casual about it at first. He's like, well, I don't know. He just doesn't. He looks guilty. But then because like everyone else over the course of it, he's like, okay, I
Yeah.
see where
Uh,
the other
Yeah,
percent's
I
coming
didn't
yeah.
into
bring up
it.
At
Juror
first,
6 because I just didn't like, I don't know, I just don't remember as like exceptional moments with him compared to other ones. But that doesn't mean he's like,
I
he still like works in the setting and whatnot. Like,
I do
yeah.
really like how he is very he defends Juror 9, the old man, a lot against Juror 3, against anyone
Yeah, I
who like
remember
talks
that
bad about
moment.
him.
That's nice. I like, in general, I like Juror 9 a lot in terms of how he's able to
Yeah.
read people and stuff. But yeah.
Well, yeah,
So
because
he,
they present him. He's physically like he's older than everyone else in the jury, so they present him as a little more like wise and as more of a reading of like parts of the situation than the other ones do, and it's neat. They get like a bit out of that as
yeah,
well.
and the way he reads like the witnesses of the case, like one of the most powerful parts of the movie is when he's talking about the old
Oh,
man
I
who
love that
is never
moment.
quoted, who just wants to feel important. Like you just get a sense that like he knows him because he thinks he's talking about himself really. Like that's why
Yeah,
he
he
knows him
just
so well.
relates to him and like in terms of his purpose, and it tells you quite a bit about him, regardless, even though you don't really see him.
Yeah. And then at the very end of that monologue, juror number 10 just goes, "Oh, what do you know about it?" Like kind of proving his point, really.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah,
like yeah,
yeah, like it makes
definitely one of my
you
favorite
connect with
jurors of
this
them all.
character more. In general, like I feel like every juror at least has their good moment. Like not all of them are amazingly like there's some who I think are more interesting than others, but regardless, I think they all have their own standout moments, which makes them all like valuable to the story in some way. And that's what I think it was makes this movie exceptional in terms of what they were able to do in terms of like writing it and stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's very impressive in that way, and I can't help but love it. It's
Yeah,
for
each of
sure.
them contributes something. Also wanted to mention juror 11, who is one of the he's just an outstanding like citizen. He's a very
yeah,
um well presented person, and I really love whenever he roasts juror 10, like saying like, "Oh, uh this I'm polite like for the same reason you're not. It's the way I was brought up." Like he is a polite person. He even though at first he votes that he is guilty, like he still asks questions about the case.
yeah. He's very
Like
like he becomes like understanding for Juror 8 over time, and it's very believable, and you can tell he's
he's
taking
a very
Yeah,
fair
himself
person.
seriously.
That's the best way I
very.
could describe him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like him. I like all the jurors to be honest. I just yeah, yeah. I've already said what I thought. Yeah, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
truly an exceptional
each one of
experience.
them all have like their importance to the story. Like no two of them are alike. They're all distinct. They all have different backgrounds,
Yeah.
but they all just come together. And yeah, that's just something very interesting about this movie. Like that's the way the jury system like actually is.
Yeah, it's a very yeah, and I also noticed like a random detail that kind of shows why some of the jurors might not even really don't even really care about the case. Like some of them are like I think there's like a brief scene where some of them are literally playing tic-tac-toe while juror 8 is trying to do
Oh
a
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
demonstration. So like yeah,
Mhm.
it's
It
like
just how some of them are really like out of it, while like others are way more like actually engaged in like the case. But yeah, like as some of them just to leave, but some just genuinely getting more invested. Like they get like more wrapped up in it all until like it all builds and builds and builds and like actually like decide the verdict at the end. And yeah, it's just such a well built up movie for like pacing and whatnot till it actually reaches the end. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
great fucking stuff.
yeah,
Blast.
yeah, and just to say more about like the game, like there are many different moments where people like juror number 7, juror number 10, they keep making these remarks about like how long it's going and how it's going just longer than they think it should. Like you don't as if they just don't think the boy like deserves a chance. Like yeah, it's just yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
Like
It's
Yeah,
it's just such a deliberate movie the way like every single thing that a character says just reveals so much about them.
Yeah, especially like yeah, I like every hint of like demonstration. Like the fact that there is the fact that you can tell they're like really thinking about this in terms of like how exceptional the dialogue is that when they outright like recreate scenes like that took place during the case just to figure out the truth is. That's what Juror 8 does, which really shows how much he cares about this case in terms of giving this like boy an actual chance if he to find out instead of like just all of them voting guilty straight away without like an actual discussion and them all turning to not guilty leads to a very powerful and satisfying conclusion. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
I really like how it emphasizes how it really like only takes one person to make a difference.
yeah, yeah,
Like
like
it's a great thing, it's the little things that
yeah.
build up like the big things in the first place, and that's why it's
Hmm.
sometimes important to
That
just slow
hypothetical
down.
is so interesting because they go like, well, let's say hypothetically, juror 8 acted a lot more like juror like 3 or 7 or one of them. He didn't, who wasn't as invested in the case or just thought, yeah, he's guilty. Hypothetically, like the movie could have ended right away, and the guy who was like this seemingly innocent man, he could have just been fucking killed. But you don't know, but because this one person was able to be like, nah, not really. Then the whole thing fucking flipped and it all changed, and it's like, that's really cool. I think
Yeah.
fucking neat character writing there. But
Yeah, I have so much respect to this movie, and I'm only going to continue revisiting this movie years on end. It is simply
yeah.
exceptional, and I
And
love it with all my heart.
yeah,
it's only like a 97-minute movie. Like it's very
Yeah,
short,
it's a
but it just
short
packs in
movie,
so
but it's
much
like
depth
just
to it.
simple. Yeah, there's like a lot to it. It's a perfectly paced, perfectly written movie. I can't really name a single issue I actually have with it. So like,
Yeah, that's why I say that it's like a contender for the actual greatest film ever made. There's just not really anything that you
that
could
is
pick
perfectly
apart.
fair.
yeah,
It's like even like both like objectively I would consider on that level, but obviously subjectively too. Like it's so like engaging just having the conversations ring in the back of your head and everything. So it's not even just it's well written as in there aren't like fucking plot holes. Like engaging, it is such a fun movie to watch as well. So it works on like multiple levels in that way. And yeah, just wow. Definitely one of the best movies we've talked about on this podcast for
it's
sure.
like yeah. I honestly think it's the best movie in my opinion. Definitely.
Uh, that's fair. I have it at like, well, I have well the representative of moral oral at first, but like this is like that's like a show. So yeah, best movie, I guess, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
But
in general, both of
Yeah,
the
definitely
that's
count.
movies that we're talking about
Yeah,
today are genuinely like probably my favorite films we have talked about on this podcast. So they're definitely gonna be like at the top of the list I have on
yeah.
Letterbox.
Well, we
So
cracked the top 10, obviously. So it's
yeah, definitely.
cool.
But yeah, we have
You
talked
know.
about quite a number of great films on this podcast. So really says something that these two films were able to top it. Which we'll get to the second film soon. But do you guys have any like other interesting notes about this film? Because we talked about for a while.
I think we covered it pretty well. Miguel, if you got anything, you could just rapid fire now. If you got any more like stuff to bring up, or we move on to Whiplash.
No, I just want to say that yeah, this movie really is the strongest testament to how far strong filmmaking gets you in a movie. Because, like we've mentioned before, it seems like such a simple movie, but everything from the writing, the characters, the acting, the cinematography, editing, pacing, everything is so deliberate. Everything is purposeful, and it's one of those movies that you can just get something out of every single time you watch it. It's incredibly powerful, and yeah, it's my vote for the true greatest movie I've ever seen. But I don't know if it's my
Totally.
favorite because we will be talking about the other movie that is kind of my favorite
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, anyways, I think I'll just say it for all of us. We all give it a 10 out of 10, right?
Yeah,
Like,
there's no
obviously.
fucking
Yeah,
contest there. It's a 10.
yeah.
Shocker.
I feel
This
like
is the
based off
most
of
10 out of
how
10 a movie. This is the most 10 out of 10 a movie can get, really.
I feel like based off of just how
Yeah.
deep we went into the discussion of almost like all the jurors and just almost everything that took place, I think it was kind of evident that we would give this film that high of a rating, and it definitely is deserved.
Mm-hmm.
I have so much respect for this movie, and I'm only going to be
A
continuing. I'm
hundred.
only going to continue
A
hating this movie
hundred.
for years.
Yeah. 100%. Speaking of respect, a certain character in our upcoming film respects human decency a lot. Mainly Terrence Fletcher in the film Whiplash. Bam! I'm
Yeah,
on fire with this.
let's get into
Whiplash is the other
Whiplash.
film we are talking about on this, directed by Damien Chazelle, who I'm mostly
Amazing
positive on it. La
director,
La
yeah.
Land, which we're not talking about, is another 10, and I'm very mixed on Babylon. Haven't seen First Man,
Haven't
but
seen that.
yeah, no, I haven't seen that. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
but I feel like
this is
Whiplash, which and La La Land are just they're genuinely some of my favorite movies of all time.
definitely some of the best movies of the previous decade, if we're gonna say that much.
Oh yeah, no
But
contest. No contest.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, Whiplash, to give a simple plot synopsis, is about uh, Andrew Neiman, who's going to this band, this music school called Schaefer. He's playing the drums. He's accomplishing his big dreams. He wants to play the drum. Then he gets in this music class by Terrence Fletcher, played by the great J.K. Simmons. And unfortunately, he learns very quickly that Fletcher is the opposite of what you'd call
Yeah.
a relaxed, reasonable teacher. One might say he gets a little angry, to put it lightly. And from there, we essentially just see Neiman's like his growth throughout the movie, how his dynamic with Fletcher changes, how he pushes him, and his drive to like further himself in this music career, and how ultimately that affects him as he starts to morph as a person as the film goes on. It's all very fascinating stuff, and it's fantastic. I'm glad you picked this to talk about as well, Miguel.
Yeah,
What a movie this
Yeah,
is!
this is a great
Wow,
movie. Another one of my favorites. And
yeah, this is a real beast of a movie. Like, it's one of the most energetic, dynamic, heart-pounding experiences that you could ever get. Like, it is an assault on the senses. It is a ruthless film, and it does not let go at all.
yeah, it's been
No,
a while since I've seen
definitely.
this rewatched this movie, and like
I've seen it
I've
like 3 times.
it was
Once in 2021 and twice this year. So I'm like got it fresh on the mind now. But
yeah,
yeah, I really should rewatch it more. Like I was noticing on this viewing, like such a cool movie and
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
different.
for
I know
Christmas
you, Miguel. You're gonna
this
say you've seen
year.
it like 10 times. I think like a little over
Wait,
that. I
what?
know you've seen it a lot. Oh, wait,
Yeah, I've
I was
seen
gonna
this.
ask
I've
you.
seen both of these movies, I think the same amount of times. But I watched this movie first, though. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
and for
I have
it's
a
out
bit
of the
more
way.
experience with this one.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, I think a big no just to get the ball rolling. One of my so the thing is, I think a thing I knew about this movie before I watched is all I really knew is it's about music and J.K. Simmons yells a lot. Those are the
yeah,
two
so
things
do
I
I
knew,
knew more
and
most
I
other
was like,
things.
okay. But I think the thing is, J.K. Simmons has such a good performance in it, and it's I think the best scenes in the movie are well, not the best scene, but one of my favorite parts in the movie is in that first performance, right as they're all like as they're all going in, they're like first thing, and he notices like this one person's off tempo, but see. He
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
yell right away. He doesn't know. But
Yeah,
despite that, there's this like suspense in the room because you know something might happen, but like nothing is. So then when he finally yells at that fucking guy, it's so scary.
the
It's
pure
funny too because he
presence
has
this
really great
man
one-liners,
has
but still,
or
it's
when he just enters the room, the pure energy and just the presence of Terrence Fletcher is just so interesting to me, just the way, just his hand gestures even give out off
Oh
some
yeah,
sort of emotion to me. Just everything about it. He's genuinely, probably one of my favorite characters in film, if I'm being completely
he
honest.
is my favorite character in film, to be honest. Like, yeah,
That is entirely
he,
fair. He's definitely up there because he has such an interesting like. See, the thing with Fletcher is, I think a lot of my favorite characters in movies are ones where they're like they're not black or white. You see, you might think there's something wrong, but they entirely have like they're not entirely wrong. There's depth to them, and Fletcher is 100% the reason of that because the whole thing is for most of the movie you're like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Why is he physically and emotionally abusing his students to get end results? It's fucking insane. But there's a scene I think maybe the best scene in the movie where it's after the fact, after Fletcher's fired, he's talking with Neiman at this jazz club, and he's talking about how like his perspective on like the phrase "good job," how you can't just say "good job" in order to make artists truly do the best they can. You got to push themselves to the limit, which is what
Exactly.
Fletcher did. He pushed them, and obviously he's going too far. He's making people go limits they shouldn't be going, both physically and emotionally, wrecking them just to reach slightly better performances. But at the end of the day, he's kind of right because it's like, yeah, in order
You
to, he tells a story
understand
about
his perspective.
he's telling the story
yeah,
about Charles Barkley, how he'd like play, but like he was just told the good job, and maybe if he wasn't like pushed to the limit, he might not become as great of a musical artist as he was. So it's like, yeah, he has a point. You need to really be pushed to the edge. But there's the whole thing was like, what lines do you cross to get to that point, and like, is it worth the means? There's a lot to think about with this movie, and that's like a big reason why I love it. There's so much to think about with Whiplash,
yeah.
and that's
Yeah, you
amazing.
mentioned that scene. I'd say the last half hour of this movie is my favorite segment in pretty much any movie ever. It's just
That is
Holy
perfect
entirely
cinema
shit,
the
yeah.
whole way
That like
through.
that just
Like
blew me away, even on
th
a
they're my
third watch of
two
this movie.
it contains my two favorite scenes in film history, like almost back to back. Like it's just it's perfect. And I think it's um the quote, there are no two words in the English language more harmful than good job, is probably my favorite quote in any movie. Like I don't even necessarily agree with it, but he just has such a great point. You just can't say good job and just really expect anything great out of it. You're kind of just
Exactly.
encouraging mediocrity. You need to push them. And one time I went like swimming, and like one of the instructors told a kid like good job, and then like another instructor said you don't tell them that, and it was like her first day. And like it just made me think of this movie. Like they really have a point. You just can't say that and just expect something great to happen right away. And the story he tells about how Charlie Parker became Bird because Joe Jones threw a symbol at his head, and how like if they just would have said like good job instead, like they wouldn't have he wouldn't have done the best solo like the whole world has ever seen. Like that's one of the most interesting hypotheticals in any movie. Like what if he just said good job?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. One
exactly.
thing I want to mention about the whole thing with Fletcher is that like I feel you somewhat like feel for him in some way because he has attempted to he has gone through like so much in trying to recreate that type of success within his harsh methods. And while he goes like hilariously over the top with them in like a very intimidating ways, it's like you can understand him perfectly and you somewhat sympathize with him. And by the end he still stands by that like mindset. He doesn't ever he doesn't change in that way. He is committed to making
Mhm.
the perfect artist, and he will literally do anything to do that. He's throwing
Yeah.
chairs and shit, destroying shit. He's doing whatever. And
Mhm.
honestly, it's sometimes just really funny what he says sometimes to these people.
Yeah, see, that's
Yeah.
the whole thing. He has this mixture of like funny and like scary to him. Like I like this movie gets you very intense because Fletcher's always like yelling and pushing people this far. But like, I don't know, some of his lines are kind of like it's funny to
They're
me. It's all these,
hilarious.
One of
yeah,
This
he
movie's
says
the
his
these
perfect example of like dark humor. Like you
yeah.
you know that you like probably shouldn't laugh, but like it just is that funny. Like this some of the stuff he says.
Yeah, one of
Like
the
I
funniest
really
thing. It's like one of the first like weird things he says that kind of shows off that this guy ain't your normal drumming instructor. It's when he's like talking to this guy in the band. He's all like, Barker, that is not your boyfriend's dick. Do not come early. And it's like,
oh yeah. Just
and
these
it's
subtle things that he says, like they all like just tie into like and how he calls like the guy uh he calls out Elmer Fudd and like there's no Mars
I
bar
love
down
that
there.
moment. Yeah.
A fucking Mars bar down there. It's fun.
He's such a
Like
funny.
yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I want to bring this up. So I was gonna say this earlier, but I got this film for Blu-ray for Christmas recently. By the way, Merry
Ooh,
Christmas for
nice.
those watching this.
Nice.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah, but anyways, maybe Merry late Christmas. But anyways, I what came with this Blu-ray was the original short that this film was based off of. So I finally watched it, and it
Oh,
was basically just
Oh,
like
nice.
a creation of that of one scene from the movie. It doesn't have Miles Teller in it, but it rather has a different actor because
Yeah.
this was like the original short was based off of, and it was also directed by Damien Chazelle as well. And it's a good short. Obviously, it's not going to reach the heights of the original film because it's a film and this is a short film, you know. But you know, it's a good
Yeah.
short that
I
I'd
haven't
say.
seen that short. I
I
think I was good enough for this, but I
I
forgot. All
saw
I
it
know
like
is
2 years ago. I don't
yeah,
really remember a lot of it. I know that it's generally the same gist, but
Yeah.
it's obviously more powerful in the film because it's a higher budget. The lighting is a lot better.
and
The
also
cinematography, editing.
they don't got Miles Teller as Neiman. I know that they got
Yeah,
Simmons. That
Yeah, it's just
got him,
kind
so
of
I'm
like
sure that
it's just kind of a guy
has some
yelling at the
punch.
drummer, you know, just out of, and it's like a good short regardless, you know, like just for J.K. Simmons, and like he's
yeah,
even better in the movie because he has much more material to work with. But like, you know, it's a good short, but like obviously this plot would like working it worked much better for a film because it was like there was just so much more development, and it all started of this one guy yelling at this drummer. And it ended up making one of the most
Yeah,
thought-provoking and energetic pieces of media I have ever watched. And it's just phenomenal in that way.
definitely.
Yeah.
Mm.
yeah.
I think what really is like powerful about it though is I don't know. I see the thing is the whole thing with Fletcher, right, is I feel like I don't know, but J.K. Simmons does amazingly, obviously, but the whole thing is I think it's not just as cheap as oh, it's powerful because he like yells. The yelling is a big part of the character, but that's not like the whole thing. I think some of Fletcher's best acted moments are even when he's not yelling. There are these powerful, more subtle moments, like okay, during the very like end of the movie when he gets Neiman to do the performance with him, and right before he starts, he leans over to him and he like just says that he knows that like
Oh
he
yeah,
like ratted him out, and it's like fuck, he has to. It's such a simple like line delivery, but you get like the all the like emotion, and it's like fuck, he knows. And then the whole performance near the end when Neiman he like goes off, he like just chooses to go beyond what was instructed of him for the performance, and he's like Neiman, what the fuck are you doing? But then he like you could just see just through his face and how he looks at him, he's like, oh okay, he gets it, he understands. At this point, Neiman's the one going further as opposed to Flesher pushing him that further. And it just, and it's a really interesting scene, just seeing how like nothing's said, but you get what it means just through the
You
actors'
get
like
all the
faces and
emotion
yeah,
in
exactly.
Neiman's face.
yeah.
And Miles Teller also does an
Mhm.
amazing job. I know sometimes he's overshadowed by how amazing J.K. Simmons is, but he's also great in this movie. And it's
Yeah, they're
like,
Oh
both
yeah,
amazing, and I really respect like the amount of drumming. Like they quite literally put their blood, sweat, and tears like into the drumming, like punching the drums, like. And I know that both. I think Miles Teller already had experience, but like he had to take lessons again.
yeah,
And I
I
think
looked at
Terrence
a bit
Fletcher
of
also,
the
J.K. Simmons
commentary
also for the.
that was included in the Blu-ray, and it did like, and I think
Oh,
I
nice.
remember
Yeah.
them saying that in the
yeah,
opening. So
cool.
yeah, it was something they did something
Yeah,
like
that's cool.
that. So yeah, it's like
Yeah.
It's interesting. You know, there's a lot of effort put. Let's talk about the. We could also talk about the technical aspects a bit, which this film looks fucking
Technically, this movie
phenomenal.
is it's so okay. Well, music, that's a big thing.
That
I
goes
see.
without
I
saying. The
The
really like.
music
music is
is
so
phenomenal.
good. Holy
Yeah,
shit.
see, the thing is, I love like just jazz in general, so it's like a big part of why, and I think this movie's definitely contributed to that. So it has a really
Yeah,
like
me too.
big bombastic sound, especially when they're doing bigger performances. It all
Yeah.
sounds really nice. And oh fuck, what was I gonna say? And then like shot wise composition, it's all really well done too. Like when
It's
the
very
it's able to
atmospheric.
yeah, yeah. It's able to convey the intensity of certain scenes well. One I like particularly notice is the scene where he's like, "Are you rushing or dragging?" And
Oh
they get
yeah,
these
yeah.
very
I
big,
love
they get
that
these
scene.
close-up shots and these quick cuts that show like the intensity of it, how like mad Fletcher is, how like Neiman doesn't even really like know because the whole thing they eventually imply is he wasn't rushing nor dragging. Fletcher was just calling him out to push him that extra intensity and like that whole thing. It's such a cool scene. I love all that. But yeah,
Yeah.
the shot of it, the way it's all shot enhances that greatly. So
Yeah. Another
there's
thing
that
that
Yeah.
I
element.
want to mention, um, with the technical aspects, it just there's a lot of like cool shots, especially with the city, and a lot of it just like really adds to the experience, and it makes like every moment so much more like powerful. Like one of
Oh,
my favorite visual cues in this movie is the scene where Fletcher is like about to enter, and then you'll like get a close up of the clock as it slowly ticks to the to 12, and
oh
then
yeah, that's
Fletcher
cool.
just bursts the doors open, and then like that the pure like presence of Fletcher is just phenomenal. He's such an amazing
Yeah,
character.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
even before Neiman is even part of that ensemble, he like when he bursts into like the NASA, like the NASA conductor doesn't even question it. Like he knows he's looking for players. Everyone just like sits up. They know they have to do well, and then like and then there's this one moment where Fletcher like he's outside of the NASA room, like it's just his shadow, but then like everyone like sees it, they know that he's listening. Like this the shadow of this one man, like everyone knows he's the most important dude there. So like they have to impress him.
yeah, and it's like very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
It ties well into Neiman's arc, and I feel like Neiman's just a very like sympathetic character in terms of just how committed he is. And it's like yeah, it's honestly kind of like just chilling, and it like makes you really want to like they did a good job of like make showing like his struggle and whatnot, and wanting to become
Mhm.
this like big artist and add something to the world. It's like a very good message about art thrown in
Yeah.
there, and he wants to like achieve
I love what they
something over his
yeah,
like brothers, which is shown in like that one dinner scene, and it's like
yeah.
it really makes you sympathize with him, and over time, just seeing his commitment really makes you want to get Fletcher to shut the fuck up, even though, even though like you know he's a great
See,
character
the
all the
whole
time.
thing is another thing I love about this movie is you can really like see you sympathize with Andrew, right, and his whole thing, but you notice he's not quite like the sane either because you see his whole thing. The whole thing I think
Yeah,
is very interesting. The whole idea of Whiplash, essentially in theme, is how much of your personal life are you willing to sacrifice for your work? And we see throughout the film as Andrew sacrifices more and more and more in order to get for his like drumming. There's a scene I really love where so well they introduced that so Andrew asked this girl out on a date near the beginning of the movie. There's a whole thing there, and they see like they have this scene where like a nice day. Well, it's not as plot important as other stuff, but it still has a purpose. They're like
yeah,
good scenes. Plus, I think that one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he's breaking up with her later and just lays down. I'm gonna be too focused on my art to like give you any attention, and because you don't
yeah.
have
It's a
any
very
like
like
aspirations, you're not gonna get as far. And what's so sorry, my throat. What's so interesting about that scene is like I don't know. it really shows how much Andrew is willing to sacrifice just for like his art. Is it really worth it? Like he had a nice connection with that girl. They had like a nice date scene early in the movie. Yet he's putting everything he enjoys aside for his art, and it makes you
Yeah.
question how much of it is worth it and how much is him being pushed to the limit. He literally gets into a fucking car crash and still walks in order to get there in time. He's so fucking pushed beyond the
Yeah,
limit. It's
exactly.
crazy
Yeah,
all
it's
the movie
honestly
does.
frightening, and he even like attempts to call her back, but she's moved on, and like, and you can tell that he's also somewhat moving on and realizing that he was pushed too further. So like, Fletcher's
Oh,
means may not be perfect, but his intentions are like amazing, and that you really simple, and you can actually, and you perfectly understand his character. So like, yeah, you can
yeah.
understand him. You can understand. They're great character, greatly written characters on their own.
That's the thing about this movie. Like, obviously, like they do have good intentions beneath the surface, but like, is the movie asks like, are their actions, severe actions, like really ultimately worth it? Like, Fletcher is obviously being abusive, but like he has the goal in mind of making the next great, and then Neiman is like he's obviously committed to his craft, but he's like sacrificing his personal life, like he's bleeding like when he's practicing. So like the movie asks like, yeah, like passions are important, but like is it really worth it to like sacrifice that much? Is it really worth it to get through
Yeah.
all that?
Hmm.
It's something I often like think of. The themes of this movie are something I often think about in like in a personal sense, right? Because there's the whole there's a good I think it's like a part way for the movie. There's this dinner scene Andrew has with all of
Yeah,
his
yeah, I mentioned
relatives,
that
and the
earlier.
whole thesis, yeah. What I was gonna say, then the whole thesis of that obviously is just like he's like I'd rather like die young and be remembered than like not have like been like you may have lived a full life, but no one remembers you after. And it's really the whole idea of legacy that I think about in like a personal sense sometime. Because I fucking like I doubt I'll ever be like I have this podcast show, but that's not I think like huge at all. So sometimes I think about like yeah, I may not be like as remembered, but sure I have like friends, family, people who remember me, and ultimately I value
Yeah,
that over being remembered as in like a legacy sense. But like like you see someone like Andrew who thinks completely the opposite way, and you see like a point he has, but he like pushes it too far, and it's something I often think about in relation to like my own life and how it all goes. I think it's a really interesting movie on
Yeah,
that that
yeah,
front
me
as well.
too. Yeah,
hmm,
I also sometimes think about that. This movie is very interesting with like another question it poses, like, is your legacy, is your impact, the way you're remembered more important than the way you live life itself?
yeah. I love that
Like,
message that is shown here. It's like it's like
Yeah.
asking a very interesting question. Like, would you rather be remembered by like people you love or remembered by millions of people? It's like a very
Yeah, and it's
interesting question.
interesting
It
because
is.
there's like there are so many cases of that happening in real life. There are like artists like I don't know, like Kurt Cobain, like a bunch of people, like musical artists,
oh yeah,
actors, they've like a lot of them died tragically young, but like their music, their art lives on. However, they lived fucking terrible lives. A lot of them were like suicidal or pushed themselves beyond their limits or just like dealt with
Yeah.
like mental and physical issues. Like, yeah, we remember them now, but like, did they really live life the way they want? And now a lot of people
Was
now
it
they're like
worth
they
it
talk
in
about
the
how those
end?
actors how those people died tragically young, and it's like, yeah, but I guess we like remember them, but like I don't know. It's something I often ponder that. It's like, and it's a very like interesting philosophical question that this movie asks, and there's no really easy answer to it. So it's like,
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
like
very.
It's
what
one
is
of the
more
most
important
thought-provoking
to your
movies
life?
ever.
You know, it's like yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, yeah, it's very thought provoking and it leaves you with a lot to sit in. And that like uh, it's just a lot, honestly. It's like this movie is like a great emotional core in that way in terms of like commitment and if it's worth it in the end in terms of like how you want to live your life on Earth. It's like damn, like
Yeah.
like if
Also,
it's worth it.
Yeah.
Also, the ending of the film, a reason why I love it a lot is because it's very ambiguous. Like you could view it a lot of different ways. You could view it
Uh-huh.
as Neiman's. like redemption, or you could view it as like his downfall. Like you could view it as Fletcher like won or lost, or Neiman won or lost, or both, or neither. Like there are a lot of different ways
Exactly.
that
I
you
I
think
could
it's
love that.
view
ultimate.
it.
My interpretation is that it's ultimately a bittersweet ending because
Yeah.
you see, in a way, all of his like all the way he's been pushed is paid off because he delivers this fantastic jazz performances that even Fletcher, who was like dismissive of him, is like, damn, that's fucking great, man. But still, it's like in a way you can view that as him losing because like he pushed himself this far, and considering he does it for this simple performance, who knows what he's gonna do to himself next. The movie doesn't answer because, well, it's not a question the film has to answer, but it's something to think about. Like, who knows what Fletcher did after, like, not Fletcher, who's what Neiman did after this. Maybe he did like better, or maybe this path pushed him down and he became that tragically like died
Hmm.
young artist he like thinks he wants to be.
Yeah.
It's something to ponder, and I think the movie's good at how it ends open
It's
endedly
kind of like
and not telling you.
setting up that question we discussed earlier with this film's central theming and what it means
Yeah.
thematically. And I feel like that's like it's just the
Yeah.
perfect ending for this movie, you know? Like, and it's also kind of satisfying seeing Andrew like finally like please Fletcher in some way, you know? It's kind of satisfying, but also kind of like unsure of what path this is going to lead him down based off of what the movie was like saying for the perspective
Mhm.
of both of them and just the people in Neiman's life. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
those last few seconds of the movie where Neiman stops and then Fletcher just like stares at him, and then like the drum roll part, and then it just cuts like to black, and that's the movie. Like it's so powerful the way it
Yeah,
ends.
I
Like
also like
after
the
all that,
emotional
like
moment where
what's
like
left?
yeah, I like the emotional moment where like he hugs his dad, but then he like decides to come back on stage and just
Oh,
plays his heart
yeah.
out. And it's like damn. Also, the music goes without saying. The music is phenomenal. In fact, this movie just needs to have great music if any of it is gonna like feel good. Like especially since the music is what builds the entire story in the first place. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
And yeah, like you said, the moment where Neiman goes up to his dad, and like you think the movie like would be over then, like they would just go home and he would pursue another career. But
Mhm.
that's not Neiman. He goes back, he delivers a hell of a performance. He sticks it to Fletcher, but then they just work together to like create this just bombastic performance. And like even after they perform Caravan, like he still keeps going. He still just does his big drum solo, which is also interestingly the very first thing you hear in the movie. Like before you even see Neiman's face, you hear his drum solo at the end of the movie, right at the beginning, which I think
Yeah.
is very interesting. And yeah, like from there you just see him just performing the drum solo, and from there it's kind of open-ended how his life goes from there. It's extremely powerful.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
So
like
yeah.
just an amazing film in like almost every way. Like the last film, I don't have any issues with it. It's just simply
Yeah.
phenomenal, and I love everything about it. It's been too long since I've seen this movie. Like even after seeing the ending, like there were so many moments that like hit me hard. And also, I just want to bring
Yeah.
up some other funny things Fletcher said that I found funny. Like one of the funniest parts was the scene where he's like talking to this little girl and his dad, and he's saying, "Would you like to be
Oh
in
yeah.
my jazz band when you're older?" And I'm like, "Whoa!"
I've always
It's
thought
so
about
funny,
that.
like, real
I
tongue
wonder what would
pull.
have happened to that girl.
Yeah,
Ah, jeez.
yeah. Good thing he was
Yeah.
fired.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene in general is also pretty funny, like, but also isn't it the scene where the I think the folder scene, like,
Oh yeah, the
Okay.
folder scene. It
With
was
the folder. Okay.
Fletcher. I think it was Fletcher. It
See
would
my
make
thing.
sense.
That's my theory. Because the other thing is, that would make sense. Because, okay, this is the one thing I see
He
people
did
say is
say
a criticism.
that he
Because they're
was
like,
sick of
well, where'd
seeing
the
the
folder go?
folders
My
lie
theory that the
around.
movie never confirms this, but Fletcher definitely took it because it's like, come on.
Yeah, they said it
He would do that.
before.
It
They
makes
said it
sense
before.
for
I
him.
noticed that like he was sick of seeing those same folders just being lied around, so he just took it, and he did it all as like a
Yeah,
test. It was all a test from him.
that's my
Yeah, to
theory. I
see,
think it would make
especially
sense.
because like he knew that the other guy, the guy who was core, like
Yeah,
didn't know the charts by heart, so he wanted to see if Neiman had
he
what it
wanted
took.
to test him more. Yes.
Yeah,
I feel like you
yeah,
could
it's
tell that
incredibly interesting.
Fletcher sees potential in Fletcher, but he absolutely refuses to show it because that goes against his beliefs on what it means to make powerful art. So
Yeah,
yeah, of course. Yeah, so he just continues to be as harsh as possible, trying to get him to work towards his goal no matter what, and trying to make him the best he could possibly be. And like
yeah,
it
Yeah.
makes you understand him despite his methods, and it ends up breaking Neiman. Like the scene where he's like,
Hmm.
when Fletcher says he's done, and then he starts beating the shit out of him. It's it's like
Yeah.
it's both really
yeah.
funny but also really tense, and it's one of
Yes.
the best moments in the movie.
See, one other fucked up thing I noticed that's not even just he is affecting Neiman mainly, obviously, but this other scene where I think Connolly's his name, right? They get this other guy in for him,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's like yeah, he's supposed to like replace Neiman for a little bit, but then later he just says like, he didn't actually think Connolly was better. He did that just to push Neiman more. And it's a fascinating thing because it worked because in that scene he's fucking pissed and that motivates him more. But it's like yeah, he's helping Neiman, but I bet that fucking damaged that guy a lot because like he probably
Yeah.
thought he was better, but now it's like, oh, I guess he wasn't. And he just has this fucked up perception in his
Yeah, it
mind
was a
now, and I find that
sacrifice
really
he was
fascinating.
willing to
That's
make.
what I'm exactly. It's another one of the details I find really
Yeah,
interesting
that's what
about the movie.
shows
It's like
that
what
like Fletcher deep down probably sees Neiman as the type of guy with like determination. Like the scene where I like the scene where he first has like an actual conversation with him asking like if there's musicians in the family and stuff, and how he uses that to make insults at his expense,
Oh
such as like
yeah.
hmm.
bringing up his mom who left him and stuff like that. And it's
Yeah, but,
so
and
funny.
that quote I opened the video with, they like he uses that later. It's like wow,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Pretty
Fletcher
much right from the beginning, like he pretty much like sees Neiman as like his Charlie Parker, and he like wants to test him throughout the movie. Like when he mentions like the kid who committed suicide, but he disguises it as like he died in a car crash. Like he describes him as like this skinny kid who was like cursing himself because he couldn't get his scales right, and like that's kind of like what he saw in Neiman as well. Like pretty much.
hmm
Like that's what he was trying to do.
yeah, it's
And
like
yeah,
it is like that's the whole thing that like brings into the whole idea of legacy the movie has because Charlie Parker like they mention like him like dying or whatever he and Fletcher mentions how he shouldn't have like died before his time but in the end his legacy still lives on through Fletcher because he's bringing him up he's bringing up his playing and then that plays into yeah he died young but he is like considered legendary now but is that worth that sacrifice to Fletcher he might think that's worth it but to the average person maybe no and it's this whole interesting philosophy that I've always found really neat and is
Yeah.
done
yeah.
very well in this movie so yeah
And
how
I
about
do
that
want to say like there's this one line in the opening of the movie like when Fletcher purposely places his jacket like on the thing, and then like he leaves the room, then comes back for a split second to give Neiman this like false sense of hope, and then he just says, "Oopsie daisy, forgot my jacket." Like I don't know why, but I quote that line so much, like in everyday
Yeah,
life.
it was
Whenever I make a
knowing him, it
mistake,
was
I just say,
definitely on purpose.
like, yeah, I
forgot
don't
his
know why I
jacket
like that line so much. I just quote it a lot. Like this has to be that's another thing. This is like a movie that I quote a lot. Like I don't know why. I
The
Mhm.
line
just find
"not
it so
quite my
funny.
tempo" is something that's just one
Oh
of the
yeah,
best
not
lines in
yeah.
cinematic
yeah
history.
That
It's
that whole scene in general is just so tense. Like it's
I
like
will
when he
fuck you
throws the
like a
chair.
pig. Like
Yeah, like
it's so like funny the weird ass insults he does, but like the way he says them is just like it's hilarious, man.
yeah.
And
Oh
here
yeah,
comes
and then
Mr. Gay Pride of the motherfucking West
yeah,
Side
I
himself.
was gonna mention that scene when like the three drummers are like competing for the how do you say the core position.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so stressful, but it's like hilarious at the same time. And I like how he like tells the other musicians like take 10, 20 minutes, an hour, like we're gonna be here a while until I can find like the best drummer for this.
Oh god,
And
I
also
love that
another interesting
sequence.
thing about that scene is how before Fletcher gives Neiman the spot, he says, maybe now it's time for you to finally earn this spot or something like that. But and he never says that to the other two drummers because he wants like Neiman to know that like that's his like he's only thinking of that role for Neiman. Like before he even does that, he knows he's giving it to Neiman. So yeah, that's just another really interesting thing. Like how every single one of Fletcher's actions is like planned out before he even does them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Another thing I want to mention with another like interesting detail when it comes to Fletcher, like spiting Andrew, he says he right after like he's having tempo issues and whatnot, and he's like substituted with the other drummer afterwards. He says like let's move on to the big boy tempo. I don't know. I always like that detail
Oh
in the
yeah.
line. I don't. I thought that was I always thought that was a nice line to just show another method of him subtly spiting him and trying to piss him off. You know, it's
Yeah.
great.
Mm.
He's a great iconic character, and
And
he
then
really makes this
he
movie.
does this like random test to like you guys already mentioned that he noticed like an out of tempo player, but I just like it because he says that there are either two ways this could go. Like one of you guys is either deliberately sabotaging my band, or you don't know you're out of tune, which is
Which is
even
even
worse.
worse.
Which is what I find really interesting. Like he's really willing to like just target a random player just to like see if they know like what they're doing. Like that guy wasn't even like out of
Yeah.
tune, but he thought he was, so he didn't know the difference. So he
Yeah,
just kicked
I
him out. Like
also
that's
found
so
that really
brutal.
yeah, I also find that really funny because it's like he just yells at this guy, calling him fat and whatnot, and absolutely roasting him, and then he leaves, and it wasn't even him. Like it makes
Yeah,
sense, and it's
exactly.
very vicious of him, but it's also really fun. You see, Fletcher is a nice mix of genuinely tense and intimidating, but also hilarious, like you said earlier, Brian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's
Yeah.
a shame, really, because this is like, it really hits home how underused J.K. Simmons has been in the last decade. Because
I know.
he's been in like fucking slop recently. He's the best part of bad
Chippendale
movies,
Rescue
but he's
Rangers.
still a part of bad
Like
movie. Yeah, Chippendale
he,
recently, fucking Marmaduke 2022, a lot of bad movies recently. And it makes me really sad because the guy is such a talented
I
performer. Yeah,
know.
he
He's
barely is
amazing.
used for these like great roles. He's fucking stuck with like direct like Netflix Marmaduke 2022 garbage, or like I guess
Yeah.
Spider Man. I guess because he's J. Jonah Jameson forever. But like
yeah,
I
I
don't
was
know.
gonna say
I think
that,
it's
yeah.
kind of sad. He's like such a good actor, and he has such little use. But see here, he's done great, and he's good in La La Land too, even though he's in
Yeah.
that movie
I also
much
heard
less.
he's
But yeah,
really good in Invincible, which I still need to watch at some point,
still
hopefully.
I
Oh
haven't
yeah,
seen that, but
that's
I hear
I
he's
haven't seen
really
it,
good.
but I've heard,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's good in a lot of TV stuff too, but yeah.
he really is. He's probably like my favorite. Well, I don't know if he's my favorite actor, but like he delivers my favorite acting performance in any movie in this movie. So like he
That is
really is
entirely.
under
He's
like
fantastic here.
he deserves to be in more roles like this. Like it just baffles
I
me that he
know,
can
right?
be in like my favorite or like a contender for my favorite movie ever, and also a contender for like my least favorite movie ever in Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
at
I
the same
know.
time.
yeah. big
He said one of the
range there.
best
Like,
movies I've seen in years and one of the worst movies I've seen in years.
Yeah, I mean, in
yeah,
fairness, he does really good in that movie. It just like the material, man. The material's just
yeah, he really
Even
does
in
not
his
deserve.
old roles, like he's still not doing a terrible job or anything. Like he's still
And
yeah.
he's in
trying.
like a
This is why
lot
I think
of awful movies. He's like in like one of the Terminator sequels, I think. He's in like
he's a
Jennifer's
Terminator
Body,
Genesis.
which I haven't seen, but like
He's good in that, and yeah, Jennifer's Body too. Just
Yeah, I think he plays
oh,
Commissioner Gordon in
he's in
both
the
Justice
Uwe Boll
Leagues
film,
too.
Postal. And I don't know if you guys heard of that, but apparently
oh,
that's a really bad movie.
Oh,
Postal
oh yeah, I
by
forgot about
Uwe
that.
Boll. He's
I've
I
heard
know
of
what
apparently in
that
that.
that.
is, but he's in that. Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
even
he's in
worse.
that.
Oh my
I'm just looking
god,
through his
That's
yeah,
even
that's
letterbox right
worse. I
now.
bad.
didn't even know that.
Damn.
Terrible. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
need this guy in better movies.
he really, but at least he like already has this. Like, I don't think he like this is kind of his defining role in my eyes. Like, he won an Oscar for this, which is 1000% deserved. Like, I'm super glad he
if he
did.
didn't win
Definitely.
that year, there'd be like I don't see how he couldn't have.
It's one of the
Just
most
so
powerful
good.
Yeah,
performances. Like, come
I'm.
on.
Yeah, he did. Like, I've seen the speech and everything. He did. And also, what won Best Picture the year of 2015? Was it Birdman? Because
I
like I
think it
love
was
Birdman, but
Birdman,
like,
right?
Oh, yeah, but the Birdman
but it
one.
should have
Okay,
been
I'll
this
give
movie,
a
really.
yeah. I mean, I'll give credit. 2014 was an amazing year for movies. Like a lot of the best movies in Best Picture running were
I could see
really,
it being like
really
Gone
good.
Girl or the
So,
Grand Budapest Hotel, but
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
this,
yeah.
it
Gone
really
Girl,
is
I
this
think, is the best.
movie.
Yeah. Gone Girl's the best. I think the best movie of that year behind this. So there were a lot of competition, but like, yeah, Whiplash should have won, but that's like I don't blame it for not. There was a lot
I
on the
don't,
plate
I don't
that
know
year.
what else it was in the running for. Like, I know it got a
Oh,
nomination, but
I
like,
can look at the nominees. I know Birdman was one of them, and there was. I'm gonna guess Gone Girl was. Let me check. Yes. Hold on. Uh, it was a boy. Oh fuck! Boyhood was nominated for Best Picture. That doesn't seem
Oh,
accurate. And some of these I've
oh,
even heard of. And the Whiplash, Grand Budapest, uh, Boyhood, Birdman, American Sniper, Selma, The Imitation Game, and then one movie I haven't heard of. Half of those seem like they deserve it. I don't know about the other half, but yeah,
I've seen
in that
like
lineup,
four of
Whiplash.
these, and
Yeah,
like two, like Grand Budapest is like straight up one of my favorite movies ever. I wouldn't be mad if that one. Like, and Birdman is
and did Gone
also
Girl
pretty
it's such a
amazing, but
great movie.
and did Gone Girl
yeah,
really not get nominated? That's weird because I really
what
think it would.
I thought it
It's
was. Damn, I guess
it's a
it wasn't.
fantastic movie.
it should
I
have
guess it
been
didn't.
really.
I should have watched
It
that.
should have. That's sad that it didn't. But oh well,
They kind
it
of do
sucks.
David Fincher dirty, really. Like Social Network and Zodiac, I feel like
Yeah.
also they didn't win, but I don't know if
Yeah.
they were like nominated.
Mm,
No, they didn't. Now Fincher's been snubbed on noms except for fucking Mank for some reason.
yeah,
That was where he got his best picture nom, oddly.
yeah,
But
that's considered to be one of
regardless.
his weaker movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know.
but yeah, still, like I'm
And
glad this movie, like at least,
Damien Chazelle in the Oscars, I don't think go well because remember there was the fucking La La Land
Oh my
incident
god,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
where
that
the
one.
Lala.
Actually,
it
no.
looked like it
The
won.
La La Land didn't win.
It was
How did
actually
it?
Moonlight, which
They had
I
like
haven't seen
so many
Moonlight, so I
people
can't
on
comment on
stage,
how.
and
Yeah,
then they're like,
I
"Oh
was so
shit."
awkward. Like I can't comment on how much Moonlight deserved it, but even so, it's just an awkward
I
situation.
know,
Like you
right?
read the wrong card,
But like,
really?
bro, that's
Yeah,
so
that's
stupid.
really
That's
yeah.
embarrassing. Yeah.
But
It's
yeah, well,
egregious.
anyways, yeah, this movie definitely deserved the award in my eyes. Like, it's my favorite movie of the century, really. Like, 12 Angry Men is the movie of the 20th century for me, and this movie is like the movie of the 21st century in my eyes. So yeah, like,
It's hard for me to rank favorites, but it definitely ranks in that like upper echelon of like film.
Damn.
Practically no real problems. Thematically rich as hell. Really anything you want out of a movie, and I think ultimately just the fact that it makes me think a lot is like I know that sounds like a silly reason, but I think a lot of my favorite
yeah,
movies are ones where thematically I just love thinking about them and what they're
Yeah.
saying about like human society. And we went over all the things about what it says about like legacy and like class and like your own self-worth. And like that's what out of all movies I've seen, Whiplash is one that makes me think a lot. And that's one thing I respect about it greatly. What a
Yeah,
what a
its
damn
thematic
I
fun.
depth
love this movie
is like
so
really
much.
one of my favorite, like if not my very favorite thing about the movie. Like it's just such a well thought out and thought provoking movie. Like, and it's not even a decade old. Like we can still make movies of like
Yeah.
this caliber. I love that about it.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it really is like it's a
yeah.
beast of a movie. It's just so amazing in every way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's like
Me
kind of,
too.
and it's hard to watch at points, but like I still watch it a lot just because I know the experience I'm in for is like none other. Like, yeah, that's another thing. This movie is like no other movie that I've ever seen. Like, it's just in a league of its own in terms of a cinematic experience.
Hmm. It's like, man, I
Yeah.
really wish I could have seen this movie in a theater. Like that would have been, holy shit, that would
They'll,
have been
they'll,
sick.
there. I hope there's a re-release. I know that this movie is
Yeah.
not held in like The
I'll realistically
Godfather.
it could next year. I see it happening
If it ever happens, I'm
because
running. I'm absolutely booking it to the theater that
This
day.
movie's kind of gotten more popular because of like the film bros, but
That's
like it really
true.
deserves to like be it really does deserve to be like held in that sense. Like I know
Exactly.
it's obviously not like considered Godfather or Citizen Kane tier, but like I really do hope that this goes down in like the classics of cinema because like it really does deserve it. It's one of the best movies made in like the past couple years. The
Yeah, and
best in my eyes, but yeah.
yeah, and a lot of people have so much respect for it, and I can't help but agree with it. It's just mind
Yeah.
blowing.
Yeah, Damien Chazelle and Jen, like I haven't seen Babylon or First Man. I've heard mixed things about them, but like just based on Whiplash and La La Land alone, like those two movies are just some of the best like ever, basically for me. Like,
Yeah, yeah, I've seen Babylon. It's not like I don't think it's terrible. I think it's like fine. I just don't
I think the main thing with
resonate with
Babylon
it.
is it's not a bad movie, but it kind of just feels like there's like a lot of it has amazing individual scenes, but as a whole package, I don't think it works as well as it should. But I still trust Chazelle as a filmmaker. That was just like a whole thing. He really like goes loose in Babylon, and I don't think it entirely works for its benefit. But they're really good ideas, and if you, I don't know
Yeah,
what movie has
I
like
don't know. I
next,
just remember
if there was
Babylon being a
another one
bit
in the
too
works.
much, you know. I just didn't think it like
Yeah, yeah, I get what you mean. I
resonated
would
with me
agree.
as much as La La
But you know
Land
what?
or
Whatever Chazelle has next, I'll be there
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I trust
I
him.
really do hope he delivers like this decade, the 2020s, like another Whiplash, La La Land level like movie.
yeah,
Like
I'm
he
hoping.
Yeah. And another thing about his movies that's really interesting is that like everyone like talks about Whiplash and La La Land in terms of their ending. Like his endings to movies, like the whole movie revolves around them. Like there's no way that this movie could have ended any other way, and it just would have been a
Exactly.
completely different
Yeah.
movie.
Exactly.
And La La Land follows similarly because the whole ending, like, it basically explains or recontextualizes the whole thing. And I guess, I don't know,
Yeah.
Babylon's ending's weird, just kind of a clip montage, but it's still, like, I don't know.
Well,
He knows how to end well, I'll say that much. Very
yeah, he's good at
interesting,
Yeah.
endings,
interesting.
and yeah,
But,
And
yeah.
also, yeah, the music in his movies also like I know we went over that, but like Caravan, Whiplash, they have to be some of my favorite songs like
they
ever. And
all.
like this movie made me appreciate jazz a lot more. Like it's kind of like I don't know, just the way that he makes it seem like yeah, obviously like it's hard and all that. Like I went to like a jazz club like in the summer and like it was a beautiful experience and like a lot of that is just due to this movie. Like I know how much work is put into it. Like it's a
Yeah.
beautiful experience and also it's just such
Yeah.
a it's kind of like the purest form of music, which is like why I think it's like the best fit for this movie and also I think it's like a very it was the smartest decision to make Neiman a drummer because like it's just like the full control of like all the music. Like especially
Yeah,
when Neiman starts out, like he realized the advantage he had as a drummer. He just played Caravan, like because like he knew that that was like he was the drummer and he could start that. Like that's just such an interesting thing to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like
Very, yeah. You want to get into? Well, I mean, all of our rating is the same. We're all
Yeah,
like
I'm gonna
10
say
out of
10,
10.
10. Yeah, 10
But
out of 10.
yeah,
It's amazing.
Yeah, 10
yeah,
out of 10.
Big surprise with it's almost like
very
you
shocking.
said it was one of my
But
favorites.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
what an amazing
Yeah,
year to end Campy Cast 2023 with some
yeah.
of the best
And in the year with
movies I've
two
ever seen.
fantastic films. Thank you for being a part, Miguel. I know you're not
Yeah,
we're
thanks
not
for
able
coming
to
on.
get you as much. So while we were on break, we took this opportunity to get you in for it, and we had a great episode
Yeah,
out of it.
yeah,
Thanks for
thank
joining
you.
us.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. Yeah, I'm
We're
surprised
glad
I've
to
never been on here, but like, I mean, I
yeah.
guess that's just me. Like, I don't have many like opportunities, but yeah, I'm
Yeah, well,
glad that
that's
I
why
got to
we're
this.
now.
Yeah,
And yeah, glad to have you on. Thank you
Yeah,
yeah,
all
and
for watching this
yeah,
yeah, thank you for
episode
tuning
of
in for
Campy
another
Cat.
episode of Campy Cast, and we'll see you
Hope you have
next year
a lovely yeah.
with
see ya.
another episode. And yeah,
Yeah, well, let's just say we got a nice trilogy to open up the year, and that's all
yeah.
I'll say. You'll have to guess which one it is.
All right,
Ooh,
thanks for
what
watching,
could it be?
and bye.
Uh,
Bye.